I don't like art being replaced
Yeah.
by like machines. This is a kind of machine, right?
Well, because and all they're doing is they're taking all the art that's been created by humans,
Yeah,
and then just putting it together in a different way,
yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
because without the art that we made, they couldn't have trained the algorithms to,
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just like it's just a mixture of all the art that humans have made.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So yeah, when we talk about like this, what do you say, this artificial intelligence kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is so yeah. I always feel it's a step forward, like within this short frame of time, like maybe this 10 years, 15 years. So we are seeing this like abrupt kind of like a shift to like somewhere where we never imagined 10 years before now.
Yeah.
So I don't know how people or this generation will handle that shift.
Yeah, and I think the rate at which things shift is like even our language and technology. It's like so accelerated. I think it's like it causes anxiety. I think among young people, the rate at which things change now.
I think one thing, like as a researcher, a scientist, or those people like us who are working in some water management thing, I think how can we like grab this, this tool? It's a very powerful tool, right? So now let's say people are using it for fun, but if we consider the advantage, that huge plus point of having these kinds of things as a tool to scientists, mostly to researchers, I think that would be very beneficial. People are doing it, as you know, like in ASU now we are seeing a lot of AI things or machine learning things,
right?
But yeah, there is this like both extremes,
right?
Right.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, my fear, I think it happened with modeling too, is that like when numerical models became really popular and we had computational resources that were able to run them, I think that it became easy for researchers to sit behind their desks and build their models. But the model is only as good as the information that constrains it. And it's the same with AI. The AI is only as good as the information that constrains it. So I think we need to keep our focus on generating
data,
trustworthy information, and then that can feed, because of course, like there's going to be some mix of physically based models, that have a process understanding, and then AI models that are just data driven. And there's probably going to be a mix of those, but both of those depend on actual trustworthy observations. So that's where I think I'm concerned that we maybe lose our focus on the fact that we need good data to start with.
So when like years back, maybe I think it's almost a decade, when you had this thought of smartphones for water. So like, did you think, or is there any like such thought in your mind that like using these kinds of smartphones and like these kinds of like new AI things will appear in the next decade? Like I think, remember it's 12 or 13, right? 2012 or 13 when we have
I think 2013. Yep. In the fall. Boy. I think like machine learning was relatively, they were calling it like neural networks or deep learning or that sort of thing. And I think I don't think it was like really clear exactly how data that we might be able to generate with our smartphones would connect to that, but certainly like even like all the pictures that we have of rain gauges, and just being able to train AI to be able to pick off the rainfall level from the images to have that training data set. I think it kind of crossed our mind, or the video clips of a stream, and then being able to extract the velocity, the surface velocity from those videos. I think those were kind of in the back of our mind as potential use cases for machine learning or artificial intelligence. But I don't think it was. I think it was more about trying to connect people with water and less about the computational side of things. But
yeah, I think the smartphones thing with citizen science, I think where it really make the major impact, the one of the most like what you say beautiful part of this whole concept I like is that the people who lives there like should be connected or should be aware or should be made aware of what is going on, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise now I know that a lot of places like people are just trying to switch to some automated like monitoring system, mostly in like hydro metro field.
Yeah.
And when they have such kind of like weird data or when they have some kind of unexpected data that might be true, that might be false, but they can just ignore it like it's not true, or they can take it as, oh, it might be a special case, but they don't have, you know, a kind of field validation.
Exactly.
So I think like the approach that Smartphones for Water now uses or have been using has that benefit, so that you can cross validate. That might be with the pictures you have in the application that we have, or with we have a live evidence that is the citizen scientist. So he can memorize and things. Oh, at the time maybe this was happening at the time, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is one of the beautiful aspect of what we are trying to do or what we have been doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I think the one of the greatest abilities that humans have is to interpret the connectedness between things and sort of to evaluate the plausibility of things.
Yeah.
You know, so like if you go out and you read a rainfall measurement and it's like 200 millimeters, but you're like, it didn't rain that hard last night.
Yeah.
And so you start thinking, then you look up and you realize that the flow from your roof was going into your rain gauge. It's like, okay, this is a bad measurement, you know. But if you just had a gauge there that was measuring that, you wouldn't know that. You know, you would just take the 200 as if it actually rained 200. So
now, where it connects is now that I'm doing this suspended sediment monitoring thing. So I think I found a very like new use or another plus point of using this images, smartphone images is that. So I have a sensor in some stream in my monitoring site, a sensor there that measures the backscatter, that measures the water level. And sometimes the sensor, like the backscatter value is a proxy of suspended sediment concentration. Sometimes it is so weird. Sometimes it goes up high, stops there for quite some time. And then we thought that what to do of this particular data. Then we go back to our web application and check the image of the monitoring site submitted by our citizen scientist. And then when we go through a series of images, compare with the sensor data, compare with the data that citizen scientists had submitted, the field sample data, when we compare those things, then that made sense. Because at some point there was thick black water discharge from some side streams or from the roads that is blocking the sensor, creating a black layer on the screen of sensors. And that just blocking everything. So that's just a pure noise. And at some point, like when we realized that mostly after flood, this when the river bed moves sometimes during high floods, the mud material or the clay material gets stuck at the screen sensors, and that's why it behaves so weirdly, mostly during like post-flood data. So. And I realized that when we were talking about combining local sensors or this technology, including like smartphones technology, low-cost tech with citizen scientists, and I think I just somehow, coincidentally found that a kind of magic. Now, I now realize that how powerful this visual evidence is.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think the visual, evidence is extremely powerful, and then on top of that, the person who collected it, their even interpretation of even beyond the image, like what's happening. Oh yeah, there was a flood up in this region, or the meta information that the people have is really important to keep the human in the loop, basically. I think that's a key thing.
Yeah. So in country like Nepal, like where Department of Hydrology, Meteorology, who is responsible for managing and collecting all this hydrometeorological data. So when they hire people, I think what they must do. So they are doing pretty good job at like many point. Now we really think that they should accept this new like smartphone based technology to transmit their data. That would be much helpful for them to manage those data, quality control those data, right?
Yeah.
But I think one more thing that they should focus on is to raise some kind of scientific awareness to those data collector, because what I realize is the people who are responsible for that, in most cases they are taking it as their job, which is good. So they are getting paid some remuneration for that, with compensation for that, which is good. But if though they are not like highly educated, they don't have a good formal education, but still if they can train them that this is what flood is and this is what we are trying to do, I think they train them to do the things, all the steps, but I think they are disconnected to the whole thing, whole system. I think that is very important. So what you just said, I think I'm trying to match.
Exactly.
With that.
No, exactly. Well, exactly, and I think there's maybe two parts to that. The one is that science, no matter how much education you have, I think can be an exercise of curiosity. So there can be this sense of like, well, last time it flooded, the water came up to this level, and so now I'm trying to check to see, this time when it floods, like, does it go higher than that? And are the impacts on people worse because it got higher, or did it somehow happen differently so that maybe it didn't stay there as long, so the impacts weren't as bad? Or so this linkage, I think that humans are always doing between cause and effect is an exercise of curiosity, and that's really what science is all about. And I think linking people into that process, regardless of how much education they have, can be really rewarding. And I kind of think of it as like the joy of measurement, the joy of observing, and trying to make those linkages.
So while talking about this, I remember one thing. So I think you remember while doing the rainfall monitoring back in Nepal, so when we do the school campaigns where we print out this flex, where like if the student like collect the rainfall data and plot the daily data in the flex, like kind of chart, and so that all the students can see what today it measures and what is like yesterday's measurements. I think, I realize now that could have been much more effective if we could have done that in other public sites too. So, for example, if there is some, like, we had some citizen scientists who monitor the water levels, right? And if we could have at the public place, not at the river, at a public place nearby where there is community gathering most of the time. So we have many like parties or bowas kind of things, or maybe some community building kind of thing. If we could make just a simple chart and we could just like a graphical dots, connecting dots, like this was the measurement last week and this is now. So I think that would have made more impact. So I think, that is something we should do, because then people will have some sense of what's going on. And maybe they feel like that, it is for us, we should, we had that experience of sometimes losing our sensors or losing our stuffs to people, some random people destroying our site sometimes. But maybe if we do something like this, maybe the community feels like, this is for us, we should try to be responsible to have protect these kinds of things. I think that might be something we should try to think about.
No, that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. I think one of the challenges of the modern way we live is that we are often disconnected from the natural environment. And that, I think the two big ways that plays out is that we don't know where our water comes from. Like we think it comes from the Dungadara or from the tap, or the whatever. It's like, and we don't know the story of like everything that's behind that. And then also where our food comes from. And I think like the more we can do to reconnect people in urban settings with the story of everything before when they get the water and when they get the food, then that'll help them protect as a community the resources that enable them to have water, to have food, and to kind of reconnect to those things. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so further adding, I think our like during last almost 6 or 7 years, so what I felt like is that there are so let's put it this way. So we have been monitoring the streams in valley, like mostly Kathmandu. So these are the streams that are not that big, like in size, but I think like around 4 or 5 million people settle in Kathmandu.
Yeah.
And maybe that is almost like almost one third of like the whole population, and that is the proportion of people that lives there. But actually almost like 100% of people depends on what's happening in Kathmandu, right? So it's that center. So when we talk about Kathmandu, I think these streams, even though there is slight change, it's in very like bad situation right now, but even though there is a very slight change in quality, quantity of these streams or other situations like land cover thing, it has a long-term impact, and it has a very large impact to almost everyone in the country, right? So the focus of government right now, we know, is mostly on the large rivers and the rivers which are more like prone to like landslides, maybe of floods, or maybe which are pretty important to hydropower companies. But I think our focus right now is which has the larger impact to most people right now. So that's why it's important. So I think the concept of citizen science, the concept of low cost technology, and the concept of smartphone that we are using, I think it's a perfect fit for those kinds of small streams, like small scale streams, because it's economic, and we can find people at least in these areas to monitor them, because for now for Kathmandu it's comparatively that's the plus point for us. But I think there are these streams which make major impact. There are other urban places in Nepal too, which have like, though it's not that like large streams, but it has larger impact among the highest percentage of population in Nepal. So I think based on the investment, this should be the future of monitoring and management, and it should be a kind of like community, coordinated kind of thing.
No, that's true. I mean, everybody in Nepal in one way or another is connected with Kathmandu, and then those streams are the lifeblood, of the valley, and unfortunately they're insufficient now to sustain the population. You have to import water, you have to import food, you have to import energy into that basin. That basin is beyond its ability to sustain the people that live there. But the resources that are there, boy, we better take care of them. And I think there's also like a sense that like in the rush to kind of industrialize and sort of kind of catch up with business and all that like the importance of aesthetics and of clean natural places is sort of forgotten sometimes in that rush. But like a park or a clean river that you can go sit down next to the bank of, I think those are things that are important for just our humanity, and for our mental health and all that. So I think it's important to keep that in focus, and hopefully the community kind of sees the value in that and makes that investment.
Yeah. So what do you what things motivates you to move to Kathmandu to start this like smartphones for water?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, it was like my first experience with kind of citizen science was actually like I didn't even really know what was going on, but we were working on some problems or challenges in California where basically there's these irrigation districts that need to deliver water to their farmers. And there was a new law that was passed in 2007 that basically said, it's actually 2009, that says that every irrigation district needs to measure the water delivered to their farmers. And so basically what people thought was they were going to just buy sensors and put them at every one of these delivery points. And there's hundreds of thousands of them in California. Yeah. And each of the sensors cost $10,000. So it was literally hundreds of millions of dollars of sensors. And we started thinking, well, is there a way that we could take one of these sensors and then give it to the person who actually controls the deliveries? They call them the ditch tender or the water operator or whatever. And can we give him or her the tool and then let them just move around with it and kind of make them the scientist? Make them the one who's doing the observations. And it really worked, and it was really cost effective because instead of needing 100 sensors, they only need one sensor. And they keep the person, as the person who's like in the loop, basically, taking those measurements. And so from that experience, we ended up going to a conference in Arizona, and there was this tall Dutch person by the name of Peter Jules van Overloop there, and or PJ we called him for short. And I think it was 2013. It was the spring, and he had this idea of using smartphones to take pictures of water levels, and he was doing it in the Netherlands because they have water levels. They have thousands of places where they're trying to manage water levels. And I immediately thought, because I had been to Nepal before, and as soon as I saw what PJ was doing, I immediately thought, wow, Nepal is really a data scarce region, but they have smartphones everywhere. It's like kind of like one of those leapfrog technologies where they go from no communication to cellular communication without the landline in between. And so I immediately thought, this would be an amazing technology. But PJ and I, we had this kind of argument about, which technology, which invention was better. And he thought the smartphone thing was going to change the world. And I thought this Doppler device that we came up with was going to change the world. But turns out neither of them have done much changing of the world. But we kind of started that friendship. And then basically PJ invited me to work on a project in the Netherlands in the fall of 2013. And so I was over there. I was staying in Delft, and of course Delft's just a beautiful place. So much history and tradition, and a great school obviously as well. And I woke up one morning with this idea, the word smartphones for water. And I immediately got online and bought the domain name.
Wow,
and then
that's clever.
And then I wrote a like a 1-page sort of description, maybe 2 pages.
Introduction.
Like a little introduction.
Background.
Exactly. Like this is the idea. And then I sent it to PJ that morning, and I guess he read it on his phone when he was driving into the Delft, which was not safe. But he forwarded it on to his boss Nick at TU Delft. And then like the next day we were having a meeting with Nick, and he was like, "Hey, let's try to do this." And I was looking for a way to get my family overseas. Because my mother and father were in Sri Lanka when I was a child, and I really always valued that experience, even though I don't remember a lot. I remember it was an important experience, and so we wanted to have our kids have that same thing. So this was like a great opportunity to kind of put together like a really interesting research question with the opportunity to get our kids to live overseas, and we just love Nepal, so that was the idea.
Yeah. I think then fast forward in 2017. I think in 2016 you already started working, right?
So yeah, so we moved well. So what happened is we started planning to move in like late 2014, kind of 2015. We kind of had made a commitment to move in the fall, but then PJ kind of suddenly passed away in the spring.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, oh, what does this mean? And so I contacted Nick, and he said, no, let's move forward. He kind of agreed to take on some responsibility for the project, and that was really honorable of him. And so we moved, but we didn't have any funding. We didn't really know anybody in Nepal that was doing work. All we knew is that we had this idea, and then we were just enthusiastic to go over there. And I really wanted to learn Nepali. So the first year, basically, I just met with people and learned Nepali. So we spent and I met with EMI and met with DHM and DOI and all the government entities, but all the large ISIMOD, all the large non-governmental entities, local and international. And I met Ram Devi and Deep, and just started developing kind of a network. And then that kind of led me to Rabin Mala, and Crew and the groundwater
Resource Development Board.
And Groundwater Resource Development Board. And in fact, that was so. And I ended up in the time I wrote lots of different kind of concept notes and proposals, and was planting lots of different seeds. And the one that actually ended up receiving funding was actually with the Groundwater Resource Development Board, with Steve. And it was the SIDA, the Swedish International Development Agency grant. But basically, the Groundwater Resource Development Board was in a big time of transition when we actually received the funds. So they just basically said, no, go do something else with these funds. And so we had to pivot, and then that's when I met you in 2017.
So I have like a different question. So I always think about like how like you were a new like a foreigner in Nepal, trying to network with a lot of Nepalese people working in government, non-government, academia. So how did people perceive you? So did they were they welcoming? So I had a doubt. And most people, when they meet Videshi in Nepal, they expect something, right? Okay, this guy might take me to some conference, might give me some opportunity. So because I know a lot of people doing those kinds of things, and I have heard stories about that. So what was your experience on that?
Well, I think after I answer, I want to ask you the question, because maybe you've heard of how people interpreted me, because I'm curious to ask you the question, or even I'll answer first, but I'm curious to get what your impression was, because it was interesting, because number one, like culturally, I don't really understand like what's going on. I'm starting to understand a little bit of like how the culture works, and I'm starting to pick up the language a little bit, but I'm definitely an outsider, and I don't have anything to give. Other than my ideas and my excitement about something, so I think I would set up a meeting, and like you were saying, like people I think would come to the meeting with some expectation of like, oh, there's some opportunity for me. And I was just like, I would be like, hey, I have an idea, and I think that it could be a really interesting idea. What do you think? And how might this connect with what you're interested in? But I thought oftentimes there was like this other thing happening in people's minds where they were kind of wondering like, wait, is this all you have?
Okay.
You just have an idea, like what do you don't have money, or you don't have like a big project or like a big university behind you, and so I think some people that like were looking for that big opportunity, that was immediately like, okay, just go away. But then the people that I think could see that maybe there was some value in the idea, maybe for young people. for example, like this could be a really beneficial thing for young people. Why then they were willing to actually collaborate and sort of brainstorm and dream about things,
Yeah, I think it's because after earthquake too, we have seen a lot of non-governmental, like international non-governmental organizations working.
Yeah.
So I've never I know that non-governmental not as a whole, but there is this I think maybe a slow spreading a negative addiction towards working with these INGOs, NGOs, which have I think less impact, but there are more money over there,
right?
And I don't know what's going on. So people we are getting maybe more money, but something is wrong with that there is no output from what's being given.
Right. It's money comes in, but then it's just like a black hole.
And then when it comes to output, it's very less, and that makes people. I remember during earthquake also, there were tons of money coming, and sometimes that's not being the money does not make to the actual victim, the one who needs it. So that's the problem. And I think that also make when there is some kind of NGO or when there is some kind of Bideshi, obviously he or she will have some money kind of thing. So I think that's pretty wrong. So we cannot generalize it, but it's so common nowadays that's not good at all. But obviously I know you have met some wonderful people who supported you, who actually believe in your ideas rather than having the finance or the expectation kind of thing. So
But I mean, I'm curious to ask you the question though of have you what was your perception, for example, or have you heard from other people what they're who is this chef guy? What is he trying to do? What's his really, because I felt that was a question. I was well, what do you really want?
So I have not heard about the feedback from a lot of people about you. I think I talk less in that way.
Sure, that's good. It's best to not talk about
other people's when you are not there. So my opinion was a bit different. So I think I share, my opinion was if someone is there, so what is their motive? So there might be, so I know there are a lot of people or organizations working in Nepal whose intention is just to collect some data and then get the data and just they make use of those data and that's they disappear. So I'm kind of a critical person in that sense, because when you give all this data to some non-relevant kind of some Bideshi, maybe they are making, I don't know, some all different plan that might not benefit you too. So sometimes you have to be kind of skeptical in that sense,
because that's kind of extractionary. It's like colonial research.
It's and I really don't like those kinds of things. So I think in our first formal kind of meeting, I think that must be an impression, because we met. You were supposed to ask a lot of questions, but I had more questions towards you at the time, right? So I like the idea of what you were doing after I saw your presentation, but I had many doubts that I need to clear before I jumped into work together on that. So that's the thing, and I think we get along quite quickly after we shared after maybe a few meetings or so. I think we really liked each other's idea, so we started working with each other, and we are here now.
Now you're in Chico. Yeah, interesting. That foreigners coming in thinking that they can do something special oftentimes just mess things up, worse. So I think I was hoping that I could find some young people who could help avoid that happening, where it's if I can just work with a few young people that kind of get what would be helpful, and then just help sort of encourage them or maybe provide them some, mentoring or some small resources to do things in a way that they think would be helpful. Then and I think that's why it was so important to meet you and Nishal and Anusha and the whole team over time. Was like just ultimately I just thought I was like a cheerleader for you guys doing something to benefit your communities and your water resources.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the perception though of how it came off, but
yeah, I think after like years of working with different organizations, like both nationals and internationals, what I realized was if there is some project, obviously we need to learn from everyone. That might be some internationals, that might be local people, that might be the indigenous people, that might be students. You can learn from everyone,
Anybody,
right?
yeah,
So there is no such thing like only the foreigners.
like a gradient, like where it's always going one way.
Yeah, since I was, I think, a school student, I always tell people, like my friends and like my friends and other students that we should always, we have this feeling of what we call kind of inferiority complex kind of thing, that we always say that the white skin guy are always better than us. That's not the case. But that is a kind of illusion. So we have our knowledge, they have their knowledge. What we should do is to share our knowledge with each other and try to build a better place, or try to build something new, something good. But when we put ourselves like at some lower level, so our mind works that way, then there is always this kind of, though this guy discriminate or not, but you feel discriminated because that's what you are thinking, or that's your level of thought, right? So first you should remove this concept that you are inferior or you are superior to someone. And I think now whenever there is some projects, what I see the part is whether the project can sustain after this international people, or after this donors, or after this foreigners, foreign researchers leave, or after like whether we can sustain it by ourselves or not. So I have seen some projects where they develop some technology, or they just copy, or I don't know whether they develop, so they try to modify some technology which was used in some different countries, and they use it in Nepal. It worked well for quite some time when there was funding. And then when the project was transferred to the local organizations, local government, what they realized was the raw materials or the equipment that they were using was very specific to the host organization, to the internationals, to the specific country. And that's not sustainable, because they have to always purchase that $1,000 costing $1,000 equipment, or $1,000 like material, and that's not possible at all. So I don't think we should learn from them, but that's not how a project or how research should go in the direction. So I think these kinds of projects can create new customers, but these kinds of projects cannot create new scientists, cannot create like a sustainable local kind of technology kind of thing. So my point of view is we need to collaborate, but we need to understand what sustainable or what the local circumstances are. And I think we have done pretty right thing, because we didn't have any like like big surprising technology or all. What we use was we use what we have, but we try to build the capacity of young researchers down there, and just transfer whatever knowledge we have and share knowledge, and then so that they can take forward the thing. And I think that's why it's still up and running down in Kathmandu, right?
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. Yeah, it's exciting to hear you say that. Now, of course, we need to make sure that all these young researchers somehow come back to Nepal.
That's
the key.
That's another challenge.
Many people you see empowered, but then unfortunately sometimes that means they are empowered to move on somewhere else. So
that's another challenge. That's a social problem. So I think we along these years we develop pretty organized, well-defined, and good methodology, mostly focused and useful for data scarce region, where there are limitations in investments, mostly either that's in terms of finance or human resource or technical abilities. So if we have such kinds of limitations in doing hydrometeorological monitoring, water monitoring, I think we are doing good. I really like the idea this World Meteorological Organization now is working on.
Yeah.
So they are working on, I must say, the global experts who are further working on this low-cost sensors, right? So you can see like our collaborators in Switzerland, this Fotrack with their discharge app, like image-based or this video-based monitoring. And TU Delft people, they are also working on similar projects. And also this Professor Walter, right? From UK, he's also working on some low-cost sensors. I was really happy when I see the report that WMO published. Have you checked that one? Yeah. So I was like, from inside, I was so happy that like WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, this global organization is recognizing the effort of these scientists, researchers, of this low-cost tech things. So that means that like in this kind of situation, we can use this technology. So that's a kind of like accepting those low-cost technology, right? There are limitations, but although there are limitations, we accept these kinds of monitoring, because I think now they feel that with the level of investment that is required to follow all the standard, the most expensive sensors, there are these alternatives that you can follow. So I took the publication of that WMO thing in that perspective. I think I would love to talk about it maybe with Wouter, with Nick and AGU about this stuff more.
Definitely. Yeah, well, exactly. And there's, I mean, it's exciting that WMO is thinking about, and I think they're thinking about citizen science too, you know, a little bit. And basically there's, you know, you can spend $10,000 on the perfect, you know, rainfall measurement station or perfect hydrometeorological station, but you get one spot. You know, and there's a trade-off. Obviously, if you maybe instead of doing that, maybe you put $500 stations out there, or maybe you partner with a whole bunch of community members to get 100 sites. You know, but the quality of the data, the frequency of the data, there's these trade-offs. And I think it's more and more accepted that basically there's some optimal combination of this range. It's not one or the other. It's not either or. It's like we need community members, we need low-cost sensors, we need really high-cost, you know, kind of golden standard sensors, and we also need remote sensing. And there's this combination of these different data sources that together can help us answer the difficult questions that we're facing, but not one of them, I think, is like the silver bullet, you know, by itself.
With the like most expensive sensors, or with the conventional way or the traditional way of monitoring things, also I think they do have their own limitations, or they do have their own sets of problems. But what we must know, or what people should know, that is that we cannot that is just impossible at some time. You cannot put like satellites for every city. Like in the same way, you cannot put like all these expensive sensors in all the rivers. So I think these kinds of low-cost technology, along with citizen science approach, will give you the idea which sites are critical, which sites are not. And if the site is critical, maybe you should think that now you should buy some expensive sensors. You can try 10 different sites. You can then choose 2 sites, most important critical sites that, okay, this is super important. The site is very important, and we should maybe go for the best sensor over there. And I think now, other 8 sites, I think it's okay. to have those little cute little low cost sensors, or just like not the sensors, just have some manual measurements. Because we know that it depends on the situation, it depends on many circumstances, right? So it gives us that flexibility and power.
To be able to make those trade-offs. Between. No, exactly. And I think we have to think about the other pieces of monitoring and the human element. Right. And that's where I think citizen science can't just be seen as a method for generating information, but more as a method for connecting people with their resources. And if you look at it in that way, it's more than just generating data. It's actually it's trying to bridge some sociological gaps that develop because of the modern way we live. And I think that has a huge value in addition to the data that can be generated. So I think it's hard to put a number or a value on that. Right, some of those sociological benefits that you get, but I think it's important that somehow you realize that and take that into account when you're designing these things. I'm really excited about the non-contact methodologies, though. I think that's definitely going to be the future of flow monitoring.
I think that might be a game changer in most cases if we can properly use the technology. Because they are low cost. That's proven. I think we can make them low cost. That's proven, and it's kind of like flexible enough to match the sites. For other sites you can see, for other kinds of sensors you can see where we need to have some sorts of contact with like river or something. It's very hard to match them with the field or particular site condition. But these non-contact things, I think they can we can they have the power to skip that particular limitation. So I think that might be we are looking forward to it. Maybe like next week, like this week in ASU, we will see a lot of them.
No, I'm excited to spend some time in the vendor hall and try to get the latest technology. Is Salvador coming? Do you know? Is he?
Well, I don't know.
His flow track is coming. Okay.
I think maybe in coming years, maybe we should talk to our collaborators and plan some session, mostly focus on like these kinds of things. Because last year we talked about the uncertainty in citizen science monitoring things. And that went really well. So maybe in coming years, I think we should focus on, try to focus on low cost tech, or try to focus on this non-contact thing.
No, that'd be cool. That'd be very cool.
Because I think it's the time now. Because we have already seen a lot of pilot studies in different parts of the world. We have been doing some, and there are other people who are doing pretty good job, and they have big projects in different parts of the world. And we have already seen some papers out there. So maybe having a kind of discussion in ASU or ESU or some other events might be very fruitful. No, I agree. I just had more. I wish I had more time to think about some of this. I think let's do it for today. So I think maybe we can continue the discussion.
Cool.
Next time.
Good.
Thank you.